Nutritional value of an acorn is not that good as far as growing deer.
Basically corn. People bag corn for being such a poor quality. I never hear people talk about how bad acorns are for deer. I hear people talk about how bad corn is for deer. It's low in protein. It's low this. Both of them are almost identical in nutritional quality, folks.
Now, I want to talk about pine thickets a little bit, kind of pine country. I think that the hunting club that I'm in Central Alabama is pretty representative of a lot of people that listen to this podcast, whether they're hunting public or private. And it's essentially, it's Westervelt, so it's a pine farm. What are some things I could do to, just increase the quality of that club?
Let me start with your first lead in. There is a lot of pine forest in the southeast. Obviously, the timber industry is a big part of our economy here. And a lot of hunters despise pine country. They think it's unproductive. They want hardwoods, right? Pretty white oak ridges. And I love a good white oak ridge and hardwood ridge as much as anybody. But I will tell you that in the life cycle, the typical 25 to 30-year life cycle of a pine plantation, there are several stages during that are very good, much better than hardwood forest, and some that are very bad. Mm-hmm. Okay, so somebody comes in and clear cuts a portion of a forest. Obviously, if that's where of a pine forest, if that's where your stand is, you're pissed off, and it's bad for the hunt club dynamic if they come in and clear cut a good bit of your property. But the good news is that if you can get past that ugly stage for the first couple of years, from year depends on how they site prep it, but year 3 to 8, 9, 10, you've got fantastic habitat, as good as, way better than a hardwood forest in terms of pounds per acre of fawn cover, turkey nesting, and the whole 9 yards. Then you get to that stage of, canopy, the initial canopy closure, you start getting pine straw, less understory vegetation. So until they thin, it drops again. And then they thin, it picks up again. So you have this period of kind of this roller coaster of a pine stand life cycle. But I like some pine management on a property because there are some stages during that process that do things that are very difficult to do in a typical setting. In a hardwood forest, I consider, as pretty as they are, they're intermittent fall food plots. That's all they are. All you got to do is go to Kansas and look at, it doesn't take oak trees to grow big whitetails. I'd rather have a lot more sunlight on the ground than I would big pretty oak trees. So
I would agree 100%. I would much rather manage a pine stand for deer than a hardwood stand because there's so many more things, so many more entries you can make in it. Now you were talking about Westervelt. They're in the business of growing timber, so they're going to maximize fiber production. They're not maximizing deer forage, which in some ways it does go very well together. But if you're in a pine stand and your primary goal is deer, there are a lot of things you can do beyond that can open the canopy. Your production in deer forage in a pine stand is directly and inversely proportional to the canopy closure. The more you open the canopy, the more you're going to have understory. So you have some of these open canopy pine stands that are real pretty savanna type areas. They are deer factories. They can produce hundreds of pounds per acre of deer forage, whereas a hardwood forest would be in the tens of pounds per acre of forage.
I can hear the comments being typed out right now on YouTube and emails coming in like, what are they talking about? Oaks are everything. Like, acorns. And it's like you have, I don't know what it is. Maybe because they just see the abundance of oaks on good years or acorn producing trees that they see it as such a draw for hunting opportunity, but they don't understand outside of that little window of time, there's nothing else happening at closed canopy forest.
Yeah, think about it. Acorn, when they start to fall, they're there for about 2 months maybe. Deer have to eat 365 days a year. So that 2 months that's kind of gravy to them. If you couple that with the idea the nutritional value of an acorn is not that good as far as growing deer.
Basically corn. People bag corn for being such a poor quality. I never hear people talk about how bad acorns are for deer. I hear people talk about how bad corn is for deer. It's low in protein. It's low this. Both of them are almost identical in nutritional quality, folks.
Yeah. Acorns
it's just corn coming out of the tree versus out of a spin feeder. It's the same thing, guys.
This is getting more controversial. I thought it was going to be. That's
right. Well, the facts hurt.
Think about this. A nutritional value, the acorn runs generally about 5 to 6% protein. And deer, for their maximum growth, need 18% protein. So you're running if you get down below 5% protein, even the deer's rumen can't function. So they can be a great energy source because the red oaks are very high in fats, the white oaks are very high in carbohydrates. So it's great for them going into the winter. They're laying on their fat. It makes them fat. They love them. It's like kids eating candy. They're very attractive. It's nice to have those acorns there when you're hunting. But when you're growing deer aren't growing during the fall when their acorns are dropping. Deer are growing antlers during the summertime. And having that summer forage out there during the antler development phase is much more important.
100%.
So going back to
your story. So, the reality for any hunting club in the South is to have realistic expectations. Okay, what are realistic expectations? And I've had the privilege of managing large data sets for Plum Creek, now Weyerhaeuser, on a lot of scale, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, where I've looked at the data sets. So what is realistic? The average hunting club in the Southeast on timber management land shoots 1 3.5 or older buck every 300 acres of habitat per year, on average. So divide your property by 300 acres, and you should have a quote, quality buck, 3-4-year-old, for every 300 acres of habitat. That's what's harvested. Okay, that's what's harvested. Now, most do get harvested under every hunting pressure. And the typical dynamic of a hunting club is, regardless of what you you tell people, it's hard for someone to pass a really pretty 3-year-old deer. You might get them past the 2-year-olds, but the 3-year-olds, even if your goal is 4 and 5-year-olds, it's really hard to get them past. And what often happens, and I've seen this over and over too, and when I first saw it as a young biologist, it perplexed me because I saw it over and over, where, and I would chart the antler size by age class, and it's pretty logical: 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and then sometimes I'd get this decline at 5 and 6. These are mature age bucks. These should be the best of the best, and it just perplexed me for the longest time. Like, why are these 4 and 5, 6-year-old bucks not bigger than why are the 5 and 6-year-old bucks not bigger than the 4-year-old bucks? And it finally hit me. It's because of the selective harvest pressure. The hunters are shooting those really pretty 3-year-olds because they're vulnerable and they're available, and the only ones that get older are ones that were smaller in life and got passed because they weren't big enough.
Yeah.
So we see this over and over and over.
They were basically high graded.
They were high grading, not necessarily genetics, and that's a whole different complex, but they were high grading the standing crop of
Right.
and taking those morphological, which we call not genetics, but how they look. So those better, and I've got some examples here somewhere. So just those really pretty 2 and 3-year-olds that are just so big that people can't pass them.
Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt your question.
Well, no, it's Grant Woods. I saw him just put a reel out. You were talking about Grant Woods earlier about he was looking at some aspect of a lot of the biggest deer that get killed in the country are deer that aren't even 4 or 5 years old. He was talking about like a bunch of deer and had examples of like he had one. It was a 160-inch deer and it was 3.5. And he's like, there's so many of those like, exceptional bucks that get killed so early because their antlers. First off, it's 100%. A smaller body, so the antlers look even bigger. I mean, if you have 100, like I'm sure, like in Missouri or something like that, 3-year-old's probably 160, 170 pounds, maybe. They're in a healthy environment, but he's got 160 inches on his head. It makes the antlers look even bigger. If you know he's already a big deer, people are going to shoot that deer, not realizing that if they are managing for age structure, well, I'm not passing that to everybody else right now. Okay? But for the ones that are trying to shoot mature bucks, like how often those deer get killed before they ever get to show their true potential.
A good many. There are, everything, and this is a very, very important concept. For every piece of dirt in the whitetails range, the antlers for a given age class and a given population follow a bell-shaped distribution within reason, okay? So if you took all 2-year-olds, some are going to be really poor. Some are going to be LeBron James. Most are going to be in the middle.